So we are delighted today to have Erika with us. She's a writer and content strategist who delights in helping businesses see things from their customers' perspective and organizing content to meet both user needs and business goals. She's an eternal optimist who believes that generative AI is a powerful tool when managed with the context of a solid content strategy. So now I'm going to turn it over to Erika.
Thanks, Rosemary, and thank you so much for having me on this meetup, and thanks everybody for joining. I'm excited to share what I've learned about content strategy and AI. I want to make sure you can see my screen before I start. Can everyone see this presentation?
It's just starting to come on the screen.
Okay.
There you go. We can see it now.
Okay, great. So as Rosemary mentioned, I've been a writer and content strategist, digital marketing consultant for more than 20 years. And most of that has been freelance or agency work. So I've worked with a lot of different clients. And when I heard about AI and how it was going to write everything, I thought, oh no, I'm going to lose my job. So I was telling Rosemary, I tried to ignore it for a while. And then I realized that it was going to be here to stay. So I dug in and started learning what it can and cannot do well. And of course, the caveat for this presentation and almost any other presentation about AI is that it's learning and evolving all the time. So this is something of a snapshot in time, but with some good basic assumptions and principles. So this was the title I shared for the presentation, but really it's just to suck you in. That's the reveal. The real title is Why You Need Content Strategy More Than Ever, but I didn't want people to feel like they had to use content strategy until I explained the value of it. So most people, unless this audience accepted, don't care about content strategy, don't know exactly what it is, or have a different idea of what it is. So today I want to talk about content strategy in the context of generative AI. So creating content with generative AI, why you need a content strategy, some different content strategy tools that will support your work. And then I'm going to flip it and talk about using AI to support content strategy. And finally, I will leave you with some talking points for anyone who wants to just start creating content willy-nilly without a strategy in place. And I was glad to see that no one in this group has been asked to do that, but I have experienced several clients who say, oh, great, generative AI, we're going to use that to create content going forward. We don't need writers. We don't need anything except some AI tool. So talk a little bit about how you can push back on that, or just general principles of why content strategy helps you create better content with or without AI. So let's start with the truth. Yes, AI speeds up content creation greatly. It's a fantastic tool for making a lot of the jobs we do as writers or even content strategists so much faster. Here are some ways that you can use generative AI in content creation. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of which tools to use, the pros and cons, and how they work. This is where Rosemary is the expert. She's a great resource. She has a handy chart that she's continually updating until she can't about which tools do what. Here, I'm just giving you some ideas to explore on your own as a jumping off point. So the first one is creating summaries from long format content to use in social media. So say you write a blog post, you don't have to write all those Twitter blurbs. You can use generative AI to write a summary or a teaser for social media, for email, for that little spot on LinkedIn where you're advertising your blog post. It may not be perfect the first time you write it, but it's a great starting point. Second is brainstorming topics and even creating outlines. I've used ChatGPT many times to just give me some ideas or outlines for article topics. And you can do it for products, markets, industries, even personas. So there's endless ways you can use ChatGPT or other tools to create, to brainstorm topics or to create outlines for long form articles. I've also seen it work really well in creating, summarizing, and repurposing content. So say you have a podcast and you record the podcast, you use a transcript, you use AI to, generate a transcript. You can use bits and pieces of that podcast or even a long form video to use as teasers and drip campaigns for email or to post on social media, just taking bits and pieces of those longer form podcast transcripts or video transcripts. You can also use it to optimize content for readability or to rank higher in search. There's some great tools for that. Dennis also shared an experience creating an ideal customer profile for a client and then asking how to make their product pages better. And he kept iterating and iterating. It's really fun to play with. I encourage, it sounds like everyone's already been playing with AI tools. So there's just a lot you can learn from engineering prompts. Let's see what else. Oh, a couple tools I meant to mention for the transcript option. Goldcast is one tool that repurposes event content into SEO-friendly blog posts. You can transcribe Zoom meetings like this one, and then use those bite-sized pieces of content for different campaigns. Let's see, so optimizing content. Number 5 is brainstorming headlines, subheads, and hashtags. So once you get your article written and you want to have some great subheads, you might get 8 terrible headlines and 2 that can be tweaked to be really good. I've never had ChatGPT generate like a perfect headline the first time, but it has given me ideas of different ways to think about my headline. And I'm sorry if you're of the camp of you start with the headline and then you write the article. I always write the article and then figure out the headline afterwards. I know people do it different ways. Researching articles or blog topics or summarizing existing research. ChatGPT can do this really quickly, but you have to be really careful. I recently had ChatGPT summarize some survey data for me. It was one of those surveys where people wrote in the answers, and one of the questions was asking how difficult reporting was for a Firewise community. And some people wrote in that it was difficult, and some people wrote in that it was not difficult. And the first time I had ChatGPT analyze the data, it read not difficult as difficult, and I got a very different set of statistics than I did when I asked ChatGPT to specifically include not difficult as easy. So something to watch out for when you're doing surveys or map. Also, I'm sure everyone's heard about the phantom case studies and legal precedents. So any research you get back, you want to fact check and make sure it's a real thing before you use it. All right, and then lastly, tone. This is probably the most fun way I've played with ChatGPT. Asking to make the tone more executive or more casual or more for a specific audience. And it's great for personalization. Unbounce is a tool that will write and optimize content or landing pages to convert better. So you can optimize those landing pages for different audiences if you're working with personalization. So those are 7 ways that I recommend to use generative AI to create content. However, there are some potential pitfalls. Did anyone have any questions about using AI, like good ways to use AI for content creation? Okay, then we can move on to the pitfalls. So there are all these great ways you can use AI. However, there are a few things to watch out for when you're using AI to create content without a content strategy in place. So what could go wrong? Too much content might overwhelm your audience or bore them. I don't know if there's any of you out there who've recently unsubscribed from an email drip campaign or deleted it without reading. There is so much content coming into my email box right now. It really has to grab my attention by being relevant to me and suggesting some kind of value. It has to add value for me to read it. Just like I get 6 newsletters in a week, then I just unsubscribe because it's too much. Content that's not written in your brand voice. So if you're using Gen AI to create content without feeding it content that's in your brand voice first, it could break trust with your clients. So If the content I'm seeing in emails from a company doesn't match the tone of the content on the website, or doesn't match my idea of what the company is all about, it's going to create dissonance and distrust. Consistency is really important. So if different writers are writing content, or we're using Gen AI to write some of the content, but not all of the content, it's not going to be a consistent experience for your end user. All of the content and customer touch points need to reinforce the brand, or people will get confused or just have that sense of distrust. It doesn't feel right to us as humans. Poorly written content. ChatGPT, when I first played with it, I wrote it off as like, this is a junior copywriter level. It's never going to be any good. And I have changed my opinion on that. I feel like it's gotten a lot better. And a lot of it depends which prompts you use, which version of ChatGPT or whatever tool you're using. But a lot of AI generated content is still very poorly written, and poorly written content reflects badly on your brand. All right, Google's new search algorithm. It demotes AI generated content, so you get lower SEO rankings. And I know the algorithm is constantly evolving, but that's a big one if you do run into those clients that are like, well, we'll just use Gen AI to create, the content on the website, or product pages, or pages where you think you're going to get better results from SEO. Could totally backfire with this new algorithm from Google. Phantom research, I talked about that. Fact check everything. And speaking of legal problems, there's you can't copyright AI generated content. So if you are a freelance writer and you generate content for your client that needs to be copyrighted, you have to tweak it. You can't just use it straight out of the box. All right. New content that's based on outdated, inaccurate information. I will talk about how to avoid this going forward, but if you feed your LLM all the content that's on your website to get it to learn the brand voice without checking all that content first for accuracy, it's garbage in, garbage out. You could be inadvertently spreading misinformation unless you are sure that what you're feeding.
I learned a lot. Rod, thank you for an excellent presentation.
Oh,
I want to thank our HR director for staying
we
here.
mute
Rosalind stayed here all wanting to be.
Okay. Okay, so spreading misinformation is a risk, and that again breaches trust with your clients if you have misinformation on your website. Lastly, content that doesn't resonate with your target audience. That's great that you can write, 5 new blog posts or 5 emails a week, but does your customer actually care about the content? Is it helping them solve a problem? Is it relevant to them? If not, they'll say, oh, that's not for me, and they'll move on to the next business. You'll lose the sale. So these are just a few of the things to watch out for in creating content without a content strategy. So the key to keeping your AI generated content, or really any content on target, is a content strategy. Content strategy means a lot of different things to a lot of people. So let's agree on what content strategy is in this context. Here, I define content strategy as all the things in the blue column. So I'll talk about that first, and then talk about why those things are important, and then lastly, how content strategy supports AI. And then I'll go through some different tools and ask the same questions. So first of all, how I think about content strategy is determining what you need to support business and user goals, what content is needed. Then getting that needed content, the right content, to the right people in the right place at the right time. Lastly, having a plan for creating, delivering, and maintaining content. So those are all the things content strategy is. So why is determining what content is needed important? Because it ensures that all content serves a useful and important purpose. And the way that supports AI is it answers the question of whether or not the content should be created. You could create, all those emails or blog posts, but is it needed? Is it serving an important purpose? Getting the right content to the right people in the right place at the right time creates positive, relevant user experiences and ultimately drive sales. If you start with a process that AI can enhance for that, then AI can make your job a lot faster. You just want to make sure you have the process in place first. And then lastly, that plan supports the consistent production and publication of fresh, up-to-date content. And again, starting with a process that AI can enhance. If you just throw AI in without a process in place, you're going to quickly find the bottlenecks. Okay. Content strategy tools. Just like cooking, there are different tools that you can use to achieve different goals. And the tools that I'll be sharing I have used them in the context of designing a new website or moving content from an old site to a new site. So first, the content audit. This is very simple. It's what content currently exists. What are we starting with? What's the baseline? It can also be used to clean up old or outdated content. I'm always amazed when I share these with my clients and they say, oh, wow, that's still on our website. Oh my gosh, we don't even sell that product anymore. Rich Schwerin, who's not able to be here today, but he's usually your friendly host, along with Dennis, he wrote a great article about the importance of doing a content audit on a regular basis to make sure the content that your clients see is targeted and accurate. And if anyone wants that article, I can find it for you afterwards and send it out. This audit, I keep my audits very simple because there's a more complex tool that I'll show you in a minute that has all the details. For the purposes of this tool, I just want to know what all the pages on a website are, what level they exist at. So, and then the URL is always handy to go back to and be like, what was that page about? A little summary of the content, and then any notes like, like this page is empty, or ideas for combining content if I'm moving to a new site, or renaming a page because it's just not a very good name. There was a tool on this page that was a horrible tool name. It wasn't customer oriented at all. So I just wanted a note to say, can we change the name of this tool? Okay, so that's the content audit, what you're starting with. And then the brand voice, brand or content guidelines. So this example is from a deck I did for a client who is spinning a part of the company into a new entity, and they were starting from scratch with their communications. So they wanted me to they hired me to write the emails and newsletter updating employees on the transition to the new company. I blocked out the client name for confidentiality. I'm clearly not a designer. So for the purposes of writing all these newsletters and emails, I needed to know how they wanted to communicate. What was their brand? How did they want to be perceived? So I start in the first column with the various attributes of a brand voice. This is obviously not a comprehensive list, but what are the brand principles? What are the concepts that reflect those principles? What's the mood? What does the vocabulary look like? So here we wanted to use consistent terminology. The company name had 3 different acronyms that people were using. Verbosity, are we going to make long, involved, detailed communications, or do we want to keep it really short and succinct? And always looking back to those brand principles at the top there. So what I've done here is for each of the principles or the brand attributes in the left column, I figured out how the attributes relate to the different principles. So for instance, to be perceived as trustworthy, I wanted the communications to be really succinct, but with enough words to be accurate so that it engendered a sense of trust. To be friendly, which is the third brand principle, I wanted the writers to avoid being robotic and to embellish with some carefully chosen adjectives that made the content more friendly. So a set of guidelines that support the brand voice makes for a consistent brand voice that reinforces the brand values and builds trust. And if your generative AI tool understands what the brand voice should sound like, then you can ensure that any content it writes is written in the brand voice. All right. A customer journey map. This is a fun tool because it is a visual representation of a customer's needs, thoughts, and perceptions at each touch point as they interact with your brand. And what I found in working with clients is that it's hard, often in a siloed organization, for the enterprise to be aware of all the different customer touch points. For instance, I was hired by an energy company to move 400 pages of website content to a newly branded website and to write in the new brand voice. And we did that, and it was great. And then 2 years later, they hired me again to rewrite all of the customer emails for just one department and process. It was for consumers that were transitioning to solar for this energy company. And so there were so many different silos in this company that weren't quite on board with the brand voice that it took just years to transition all the content over to that new brand voice. And for a consistent user experience, you want your customers to understand, to hear the same voice every time they interact with you. And if you don't know all the places they interact with you, you're not going to be able to do that. So a customer journey map supports how it helps you see things from the customer point of view. It helps you understand all the places your customers are interacting with your brand. And it also helps define what content is needed and where. So if you realize, oh, wow, we have this, set of emails that goes out when a customer transitions to solar, then that goes into your content strategy of content that needs to be updated or automated. All right, that's the customer journey map. And then finally, the content matrix. And this is that big juicy document that I was referring to earlier. I start with a content inventory of any existing content. And then if we're creating a new website, I create a content matrix that is a real-time snapshot of the status of each proposed page and all of the associated content. So graphics, words, metadata, anything that's going to go with that new page. And this really supports the project management of the website redesign. And I talked about content strategy as a plan to manage the content. I found this tool to be really helpful in figuring out where the gaps are and what needs to be in the gap and who needs to approve it, where we're getting it, what the status is. All of that is in this one giant spreadsheet.
Erika, I have a question on what you were just talking about. So why do you think it was hard for them to get on board with the brand voice guidelines? Did they not have the info they needed? Did they disagree with it? Can you respond to that, please?
I don't think they disagreed with it. I just think the company was so siloed that a lot of the different departments were kind of doing their own thing with their own marketing. And when the overarching marketing department said, hey, we're moving to this new brand voice, they maybe didn't understand that it was important for their content to also be in the brand voice. And I don't think there was a clear snapshot of all the different content that was going out to clients. I mean, this is a big energy company. They had, they had email, they had transactional emails, they had marketing emails, they had the website. I'm sure they had like print content, and a lot of the departments were kind of doing their own thing. So they weren't under that. They were officially under the umbrella of the main marketing department, but they were kind of used to being more independent. Does that answer the question?
Margie, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate your stopping to answer it. I was just wondering if it sounded like it was also an internal alignment or prioritization issue, and in addition to a technology issue and enabling it.
For sure, a prioritization issue. I don't think that all the different departments felt as strongly about how important it was to incorporate this new brand voice. They didn't really see the value. So maybe that wasn't sold well from the beginning. Okay, back to the content matrix. So I would start with the information architecture or the site map to create this content matrix. And then I would use the content audit from the old site to inform the content matrix. And then these different columns can include whatever is useful. So for me, the page level and the sitemap was useful. I included links to wireframes and design templates. And that was also a nice way to see what was still needed. So maybe the wireframe wasn't finished yet, or the design template wasn't finished yet. It was a really clear visual cue that, oh, there's an empty box, something needs to go there. So we're waiting for something there. And especially the reviewer status for this project, there were multiple reviewers, and it's just a nice way to keep track of all the content from a project management perspective. And how it supports AI is it shows where content can be reused. It shows where and what content is needed and important. So once you've confirmed that this piece of content is needed and important, then you can choose how you're going to write it. Are you going to use AI, or are you going to write it yourself? And when you see where it can be reused, maybe it's going to be reused in a slightly different format. Maybe it's going to be shorter, longer. You can use AI to change the format or the length, or even the tone if your client is advanced enough to be using personalization and you want to reach out to different people in different languages, or in different industries. So that's where you can use generative AI to slightly tweak the base content to make it different and more applicable to the specific audience you're trying to reach. And the content matrix is a great way to keep track of all that. All right, so this is where we flip things. AI can also, not only can AI be used to speed up the content creation process, it can also be used to speed up the content strategy process. So how do we do that? There's a few different ways. One, starting the content audit process. So there are many ways to do a content audit. You can look through every single page in the website and hope that you are seeing all of them and that you have a comprehensive list. Or you can use a site audit tool like Screaming Frog, which in about 2 seconds will give you all the URLs in a spreadsheet, and it ensures you're not missing any pages. It is so much faster than going through manually and trying to figure out all the pages on a website. Competitor keyword analysis, when you're thinking about which words you want to use for SEO. There are so many tools now that can do this, and this is a whole nother presentation. I'm sure Rosemary has some great ideas there, but SEO, I mean, yeah, it can hugely speed up that process. Defining the brand voice attributes. So in the slide with the brand voice, I had friendly, responsible, and I can't remember the third one, but this is the example that I was referring to when Dennis was defining brand voice attributes for Erika's gluten-free kitchen. I don't know if you saw Dennis's blog post about that, but he used ChatGPT to define the brand voice attributes, like based on the existing content, what should those brand voice attributes be? And I know that Copy.ai and Jasper both offer a brand voice feature so that you can apply your brand voice to your content once you've defined it. So another way to speed up the content strategy process. Laying the groundwork for your customer journey map. ChatGPT can help with this. There was an example I saw recently where someone started with using ChatGPT to create a research plan, and then how to find customers to interview to inform the research. And then it generated the interview and survey questions for those customer interviews. Then it generated the emails to recruit the customers to interview. Then it analyzed the research. It created enhanced personas based on the research and came up with possible touch points in a user journey. Now, all of this had to be validated by a human, but there was just so much time saving on the front end that I think it's worth exploring. Number 5, generating ideas for KPIs for content or user touch point. What would success look like? ChatGPT can help you brainstorm KPIs, and then you have to obviously look at them and make sure they make sense. And if not, engineer your prompt. Change your prompt a little bit to get what you want. Also, you have to know what your business goals are before you can generate ideas for KPIs. So starting with a business strategy is important. Generating ideas on how to improve the user experience. There are tools that can look at your site and give you ideas for what could be improved from a user experience perspective, and then generating ideas for what content might be needed to achieve those business goals. So once you have the business strategy in place, you can ask ChatGPT to give you ideas like, how do we support this business strategy? Was there a question?
No,
Okay.
we're good. I'm
Okay.
answering. It's just about your tools that you recommended.
Okay. And these are just a few examples. There is so much more. I just encourage you to start playing, especially with the prompts. I know Rosemary has a lot of prompts that she uses in her consulting, just kind of refining and refining and refining until you get something that you're happy with.
Can I make a suggestion there on one of the coolest things to get the best prompts? Is
yes.
You tell ChatGPT everything you want to do with the output, and you ask it to write your prompt for you. You will get an awesome prompt back.
Wow, that is so weird and makes sense. Thank you. Great. Okay, so to summarize, here are some talking points that you can use to advocate for a content strategy. So make sure those existing processes work before you hit the turbo button. So if there's already a place where in your content management system, if there's for instance, approval. My clients often get bogged down in approvals, and it takes sometimes way too long to get approvals. If you suddenly amp up the amount of content that's going through that blocked approval cycle, it will just cause frustration. So make sure you smooth out those processes before and find the bottlenecks before you step up content production. More content is not necessarily better. Just because content can be created doesn't mean it should be created. So keep the focus on supporting your business goals and your customers or your users' goals. So keep your customer happy, give them valuable information that they need, and make sure your business goals are in there as well, and you'll be fine. Number 3, taking the time to understand your customer cannot be underestimated. It will make your marketing so much more targeted and effective, whether or not you're using artificial intelligence to generate content or not. Don't dilute your brand or bore your customer. Make sure you understand their pain points and that you're solving for them at the macro level and the micro level. So when I'm talking about there is the smallest detail of your UX copy can make such a big difference in user interactions. So as long as you always keep that customer in mind and think about what would make it easier for them, what problem can I solve for them? How can I smooth out this process? How can I take out an extra layer of interaction? You'll find success if you keep that customer in mind. And then before you feed all of your site content into an LLM, clean it up. Make sure it's up to date and accurate. Like I said, garbage in, garbage out. Find the products that you just discontinued or renamed before you feed it to the LLM. And then if nothing else works, just remembering that Google's new algorithm specifically is looking for the AI generated content. And I know Google will continue to evolve that algorithm to make sure that they are getting search results that add value for their customer. Google's really good at keeping their customer in mind. What's the most important information to show first in those search results? You can't fool the Google algorithm. Okay, thank you so much for listening to me. I would love to connect with any of you on LinkedIn or answer any additional questions. Are there questions right now that I can answer?
No, we don't have any more in the chat, but you just were talking about Google, and I thought it would be an interesting question to ask the audience. They can put the answer in the chat, but since you started using AI to create content and do other things with it, how has that affected your use of Google search, organic search? Has it dropped? Has it increased? Has it stayed the same?
Are you asking the audience or me?
Yes, I'm asking everybody. I thought
everybody. Okay.
We can kick off and then you can talk about So the big thing, I think that's coming out of your presentation, which was excellent, was how to do a content audit really well, right? And I think another interesting question would be, how many people here have done a content audit? And don't you find, yeah, but don't you find, Erica, that companies can resist doing that because they think, oh, that it's going to be a lot of work for them? Because they do have to be involved every step, right?
Yeah, you do have to get product managers to look and say, like, is this really the freshest content? It is a lot of work from a project management perspective and from an effort perspective. And it can really pay off. I mean, nobody wants their product to be misrepresented. And often people aren't aware of old content that's on the website. Maybe they are new to the job, or maybe they just replaced someone, or there's not often one person who's been there forever who knows all the content on the website, which is where Screaming Frog can be a huge help, because it's easy to miss these little hidden pockets on websites. And yeah, I love surprising clients with, like, hey, look what I found. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's from 5 years ago. We don't even do that anymore. Where did you find that? But if I can find it, there are search engines that can also find it.
Well, and the other nice thing about Screaming Frog is you can use their API to connect Google Analytics data and Google Search Console data. So not only do you have the URLs, but you have all this other rich data about, is anybody actually reading this content? Because so much content is just undiscoverable on a website.
Yeah, and that's great to arm yourself with if you're, creating a new site design and people don't want to let go of their content that nobody's actually reading. It's great if you can just present the data and be like, it's nothing personal against your awesome content, but nobody's actually looking at it or reading it or caring about it. Or maybe it's just hidden. We don't know. There are different ways of interpreting the data. But yeah, if you're looking for ammunition to get rid of content, a content audit can help.
Right, right. And then Martha had another comment about for using Gen A. She interviews subject matter experts, upload this transcript, and ask for a synopsis, which I thought was a great idea.
Yes, for sure.
Do we have any other questions?
I had a technical question. So you did the voice, you did a chart.
Mm-hmm.
Do you upload the chart to ChatGPT to train it on your voice and tone, or do you upload charts, or are you typing in things you want it to know about voice and tone or whatever else you've developed?
Oh, I have not used ChatGPT to do that. I'm sure you could do it either way. Rosemary, do you have any experience uploading brand voice attributes?
I'm just going to share something to show people how to do this. I'm not sure what screen you're seeing.
The beautiful sunset over the ocean.
Okay. All right.
Very
well,
relaxing.
Okay, so if you don't know about custom instructions, it's a really important feature to have in ChatGPT. And what it does is it allows you to tell ChatGPT all these things about your content, your business, how you want the data output. So let me see where they've moved it, because they keep moving things all the time. Okay, here it is, custom instructions. Okay, all right, so custom instructions, you set that up in settings, and it's done in two parts. The first part here should be all about you and your brand and your business. So you can see here, I'm the president of To The Web, and on and on and on. You get 1,500 characters. And as you can see, I'm using almost every single one. All right. So take full advantage of what you want ChatGPT to know about you. And the second part is how you want your output. What do you want to tell the bot, and how should it respond? Okay. Now you can say things to it and it doesn't, it ignores it. Like, how many times have you asked it to write an email and it says, I hope this finds you well? I mean, it's just not how we speak, right? And so this second part is all about how I want my responses to be. So I don't know if this 1500 will fit in the chat. If it doesn't, I'm happy to share it with you. Let me just.
But I'd like to customize it for each client, you know, how
So
respond. Yeah.
I've different, so I have clients custom GPT. So when I'm working on there, I dump theirs in here instead of mine.
Okay, cool.
It's
So
a
you
real
have it on the
hassle.
side. You have
It's
it
a
on the
real-
side and then you like swap them in and out. If you're working on your client, you'll just customize it for the client and then you'll.
And
customize it.
usually you only have to customize the top part because you will pretty much want to have the bottom part the same no matter what. And one of the best things here is after you get your response is to ask it to provide follow-up questions to further explore the topic. That's hugely important. So let's see if I can add this to the chat. And do we have any other questions for Erika, who has done a fabulous?
I have a quick question. This is Margie again, if you don't
Yeah.
mind. Yeah. So, and maybe it's a combo question for you both, because thinking about again, back to the brand voice, and Rosemary, we've talked about this a little bit, is I think a lot of times it's hard for writers, internal and external, to really know what you mean by a term like friendly. Or I have one client that says, let's be disruptive, right? But many people think that means something else. And so in the past, before the era of AI, I would create brand voice guidelines and give them, 3 examples of what to do, an example of when, you're going too far. That's not what we mean by disruptive, and sort of a spectrum. And it took a lot of examples. And I'm wondering if there's a way to have it learn from the examples, maybe even of content that's already published and out there. Because I wish in these custom instructions, there was a way to like attach a document or include a link and say, write like this. But or maybe there is in copy AI or something else, because a lot of times I feel like these instructions just don't give enough detailed guidance.
Yeah, I've heard that both, I agree completely, like you need those examples, otherwise people don't know what you're talking about. And I believe that Jasper and not ChatGPT, but copy.ai, you can feed examples. And Rosemary, you probably know more about this than I do.
So what I do if I'm trying to copy something, I will give ChatGPT those links to pages that are very similar to my favorite brand voice. And another trick you can do is if you don't really know what your brand is, you can give ChatGPT a whole lot of URLs and say, please describe my messaging. What is my brand voice? And then that's something you can use in your custom instructions. So I'm just going to copy into the chat. Let me stop sharing here. A link to my custom instructions. And I think there's a big question there. Oh, that's not it. Okay. Also, when you do your custom instructions, keep a copy, because ChatGPT deleted mine one time, and that felt like disaster.
Painful. Oh my gosh.
Questions. Let's see. Inch of similar links. Ask what? Rebecca, can you just ask your question out loud, please? You can come off mute now if you'd like to ask Rebecca questions before we wrap up. We have I'm not hearing anybody. Erika, can you say something?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, okay. I can hear you, right. Okay.
I hear you, Rosemary. I'm not sure what my question was. Could you read it? This is Rebecca.
Okay. So I didn't understand what you put in the chat.
Very helpful.
No, it says inch of similar links ask. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay.
I'm sorry, I did follow.
All right, well, if we have no more questions, a big round of applause for Erika. Thank you for all the time you put into this presentation. It's excellent. And we'll look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Bye.